On March 15th, 44 BC, in the theater of Pompey, Gaius Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in the world, lay dead, his white toga stained crimson from 23 stab wounds inflicted not by foreign enemies, but by his friends, allies, and colleagues. How did one man grow so powerful that his own senators believed murder was the only way to stop him? And why did his death, intended to save the Roman Republic, ultimately destroy it forever? This is the story of Julius Caesar, his meteoric rise, his absolute power, and his brutal assassination. To understand the man who became a god, we must first understand the broken world he was born into. The Rome Caesar was born into in 100 BC was a republic tearing itself apart with street gangs, populist demagogues, aristocratic plots, and massive wealth inequality. Caesar's family, the Julii, was noble but poor and politically irrelevant. His aunt's marriage to Gaius Marius, a new man who defied the Senate, put Caesar on a kill list when the aristocratic champion Sulla won a bloody civil war. A teenage Caesar was stripped of his inheritance, forced to flee, and only spared when friends begged Sulla, who reluctantly agreed, saying, "In this one boy, I see many Mariuses." This taught Caesar his first great lesson. The old rules were a lie, and politics was a game played by rich, powerful men. His ambition was legendary. When captured by pirates, he laughed at their 20-talent ransom, demanding 50. He bossed them around, forced them to listen to his speeches, and joked he'd return to crucify them. Upon his release, he raised a fleet, hunted them down, and did exactly that. This was Caesar, charming, brilliant, and absolutely ruthless. Caesar returned to Rome, climbing the cursus honorum as a brilliant lawyer and captivating speaker. He borrowed insane amounts of money to fund public games, making himself wildly popular with the common people, a popularis, and hated by the conservative aristocrats, the optimates. By 60 BC, as consul, he was blocked by his enemies. He knew he couldn't break the system alone, so he made the most important political move of his life. He approached the two most powerful and frustrated men in Rome, Pompey the Great, the military hero the Senate refused to honor, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in Rome, despised by the aristocrats. Caesar's pitch was simple. They hate all of us. If we work together, we can own this city. This secret alliance, the First Triumvirate, was an unofficial three-man dictatorship. They controlled elections, passed their own laws, and divvied up the republic. Crassus got Syria, Pompey got Spain, and Caesar got Gaul. Gaul, modern-day France, Belgium, and Switzerland, was a vast territory the Senate hoped would be Caesar's downfall. Instead, for 8 years, Caesar systematically conquered the entire region. He wasn't just a general, he was a brand. He sent his battlefield dispatches, the Gallic Wars, back to Rome like episodes of a hit TV show. He was a military genius, and his men adored him, their loyalty to him, not to Rome. His final victory at the Siege of Alesia was brilliant and brutal. Besieging the Gallic warlord Vercingetorix, Caesar was then surrounded by a Gallic relief army. He built 2 sets of walls, one to keep Vercingetorix in, one to keep the relief army out, fought a battle on 2 fronts, and won. He starved Vercingetorix into surrender, paraded him in chains, and publicly strangled him. With Gaul conquered, Caesar was fabulously wealthy, a public hero, and in command of a loyal army of 50,000 veterans. Back in Rome, the Senate was terrified. While Caesar was in Gaul, the Triumvirate crumbled. Crassus was killed in Parthia, leaving just Caesar and Pompey. Pompey, now allied with the Senate, grew fearful of Caesar's power. In 49 BC, the Senate issued an ultimatum: disband your army and return to Rome immediately, or it will be considered an act of war. Obeying meant political destruction. Refusing meant treason. A provincial governor was forbidden by law from bringing his army into Italy. The border was a tiny river called the Rubicon. Caesar agonized on the bank, knowing that crossing meant civil war. Finally, he turned to his men and said, "Alea jacta est." The die is cast. He spurred his horse into the water. Caesar moved with unexpected speed, forcing Pompey and the Senate to flee to Greece. At the Battle of Pharsalus, Caesar, though outnumbered 2-1, crushed Pompey's forces. Pompey fled to Egypt, where Pharaoh Ptolemy III's advisors, betting on the winner, had him murdered. When Caesar landed, he was presented with Pompey's head in a basket. While in Egypt, Caesar sided with the young pharaoh's 21-year-old sister Cleopatra in her own civil war. He defeated her brother, installed her as queen, and began their famous love affair. He mopped up resistance in Turkey, sending back his most arrogant message, "Veni, vidi, vici." I came, I saw, I conquered. He returned to Rome in 46 BC as the undisputed master of the Roman world. He was pardoned and made dictator, first for a year, then 10, and then in February 44 BC, dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. As dictator, Caesar was an effective populist reformer. He passed laws to relieve debt, reformed the grain dole, granted citizenship to provincials, launched public works projects, and most famously, reformed the calendar, creating the Julian calendar we still use. The common people loved him, but the aristocrats saw a king, a tyrant who had shattered every tradition. He put his face on coins and wore his victor's laurel wreath constantly. They believed he was destroying the Republic. A conspiracy formed, led by Gaius Cassius Longinus, who hated Caesar's power, and Marcus Junius Brutus, a close friend Caesar loved. Cassius convinced Brutus it was his patriotic duty to kill Caesar and liberate Rome. They gathered over 60 senators and set a date, the Ides of March. The omens were all there. Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, had nightmares and begged him not to go to the Senate. A soothsayer had warned him, "Beware the Ides of March." On the morning of March 15th, Caesar joked to the soothsayer, "The Ides of March are here," who replied, "Aye, Caesar, but not yet gone." He almost stayed home, but a conspirator, Decimus, flattered and shamed him into going. At the theater of Pompey, the plot unfolded. Tilius Cimber knelt with a petition and pulled Caesar's toga from his shoulders. The signal. Casca struck the first blow. Caesar tried to fight back, stabbing Casca with his stylus, but the others crowded in, stabbing him from every direction. Then he saw Marcus Junius Brutus, dagger in hand. Caesar's last words, according to Suetonius, were, "Cessa technon," "You too, my child," later immortalized as "Et tu, Brute." He collapsed, bleeding from 23 wounds. The liberators ran into the streets shouting, "The Republic is free." But the people of Rome were silent. The conspirators made one fatal mistake. They had no plan for what came next. They expected to be hailed as heroes, but the people were horrified. At Caesar's funeral, Mark Antony read his will, which left his gardens to the people and money to every citizen. The crowd exploded in a rage, forcing Brutus and Cassius to flee. Caesar's death did not save the Republic. It was the final stab wound to the Republic. It triggered 13 more years of brutal civil war, first as Caesar's loyalists. Mark Antony and his adopted son Octavian hunted down Brutus and Cassius, and then as Antony and Octavian turned on each other. When the dust settled, Octavian stood alone. He changed his name to Augustus and became Rome's first emperor. That is Caesar's greatest legacy. The men who murdered him to prevent a king were the very reason Rome would be ruled by emperors for the next 1,500 years. His name, Caesar, would become a title for rulers like the Kaiser and Tsar. Was he a power-hungry tyrant or a populist hero? A butcher or a visionary? The answer 2,000 years later is yes. What do you think? Was Caesar a hero or a villain? Let me know in the comments. If you learned something, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history.